In this week's episode of Making with Luke and Ujjan, we interview Peter Rader, who is a rising sophomore at Ithaca College where he majors in sports media. He has made a name for himself by creating videos for Ithaca Athletics, highlight reels for athletes, and at the moment through an internship with the Baltimore Orioles. Peter is a talented photographer, filmmaker, and editor, and we are excited to share his story with you all.
To start off, tell us who you are, where you're from, and what it is that you do.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Peter Rader. I'm from Franklin, Massachusetts. I'm going to be a rising sophomore at Ithaca College. I do creative video and social content for sports. I currently work with the Baltimore Orioles as a video content intern, and I work with the Ithaca College Athletic Department as a creative video specialist.
Awesome.
Sweet.
So with that, how did you get into filmmaking and making videos for like sports teams and whatnot?
I started in high school and I started to, I picked up a camera and I started shooting some sports with some friends of mine. And I started out in photography and I eventually moved into video, and, everything kind of took off once I got to college. I was all right in high school. I wasn't that good. And then I got to college and everything, took off, and I was able to really find my style of editing and shooting, and I was able to make a little bit of a name for myself and, be successful in my own mind.
Sweet. So you said Franklin, Massachusetts is where you grew up. How did growing up in Massachusetts impact you as a filmmaker?
I think that it didn't really impact me as much as, growing up anywhere else in the country. I mean, I'm very lucky that my parents were able to support me through my journey, and, they helped me out with some of my equipment. I ended up buying my first camera, but, I got help with my laptop and some editing software to get started. And, I was able to grow my passion and love for filmmaking and photography, and end up going to college and be surrounded by a lot of other talented people that, pushed me to be where I am today.
Did you ever venture into the city of, I'm from Boston, so just like a question there.
I never really, I've been to Boston a bunch of times, just, growing up around here, but I never really went and made anything in Boston. A lot of kids would go and go shoot videos of the city and stuff like that, but I never really did that.
Gotcha. So obviously you mentioned your niche is clearly capturing the sports world and different sports teams. How did you initially get into this? Was there anyone that inspired this focus? How did that all come about?
I've always loved sports. Sports been a really big part of my life. I started shooting for a few of my friends on the JV football team. I shot some photos for them. A lot of other kids liked them. I kept going, and I just kept working in sports, and I really loved it. And, when I was in high school, I saw myself maybe going into sports, maybe going into some corporate video production, maybe film production. I wasn't really sure. But once I got to college, I think I really realized, that I wanted to work in sports.
Sweet.
And with that, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but what did content creation look like for you in high school? Like kind of from start to finish, because I imagine you evolved a little bit as time went on.
Yeah, so like I said, I started in photography, and I'd shoot photos from games, and I'd send them to the players. I got paid like $5 a game shooting basketball my sophomore year of high school, which is it's like not getting paid.
Yeah.
You're shooting for 2 hours and you're getting $5. So, I kind of evolved from that, and I started making some videos, and I would kind of just go to a game and make a recap from the game, and that was all I did. And I never made any other types of content outside of games. Towards the end of my high school years and into college, I started realizing that there's way more than just creating content for games, and that you can push, individual player brands, and, you can shoot practices and focus on individual players and coaches, and, the whole culture of the team. And in college, it's very important for recruiting, focusing on all sorts of things and creating content in all these different, specific genres. So I think that it's very beneficial to do that.
Yeah. And so on your YouTube page, one of your first uploads is Inside the Lines, Franklin Panthers Football, which was a 3-part docuseries that in total has around 7,000 views. And so what was it like creating that series and receiving such a positive response, at least viewership wise, early on in your filmmaking career?
I think that was like my first big project. I was in contact with a football coach, and I really wanted to do this thing. I wanted to make a small documentary docuseries, and I started to get going. And looking back at it, it was really like not good. There was a lot of things that I would change from then, and it's only 3-4 years ago. It was really not a long time ago. The views for me back then meant more than like what I thought of the video. And I think that I've changed a lot in that sense. Like getting all those views on the videos was like a really, really big deal for me. No one had ever really done this at my school, and all the players and the parents, and they all really liked it. They sent it out to everybody they knew. It was a very good experience for me.
So fast forward a little bit, March of 2019, you were able to get onto the floor of the UNC Boston College game. Could you talk about how that happened and sort of what went into that whole process?
So at a point in my senior year, there's a hockey photographer that I really liked in the Boston area. And I emailed him and I asked him how I could get to shoot some Division I games, whether it be hockey or basketball, because there's a good amount of it in the Boston area. And I ended up emailing athletic communications reps from BC, Northeastern, BU, UMass, Providence, all the Division I schools in the area. And I ended up getting a response from Boston College basketball. And for one of the games, I just asked for a press pass. I said I wouldn't get paid. I said I was just there for experience. And they ended up saying, yeah, you come through. We'll leave a credential for you at the door. So I went in, I got my credential, and I was able to shoot the game. And it was just because I took that initiative to cold email those athletic communications reps.
That's sick. Did you enjoy it?
It was like one of the coolest experiences I've had in my short career.
Yeah. At what point in high school did you know that you wanted to pursue sports media as a career?
I think that in my senior year, I really realized that. I think that I started to become much, much more passionate about sports in general, and sports photography and video. And I started discovering the world of content creation rather than just video production when I was a senior in high school. And I think that really transformed my career path. I mean, I went into school as a film major, and I quickly changed from that to a sports media major because I knew that was what I wanted to do.
Gotcha.
And so you've mentioned college a couple of times. What brought you to Ithaca College? Like, what did your college search look like, and how did you settle on Ithaca?
I think that it stood out to me initially because of its film school and its communication school. When I was in high school, I was so set on going to a film school. And I'm really, really happy that I ended up at Ithaca because when I was searching for schools, I was applying to schools that, if I majored in film, I would have had to completely transfer out of the school if I didn't like it. I was thinking about going to Hofstra and Elon. Those are my top three: Hofstra, Elon, and Ithaca. And, they're pretty similar schools when it comes to communications. But Ithaca just stood out to me. I stepped on campus my first time my junior year of high school, and I immediately fell in love with it, knew that it was where I wanted to be.
That's awesome. And you've mentioned with the Boston College thing, you kind of cold emailed people, so you've never really been hesitant to reach out. And one of the people you reached out to or one of the groups you reached out to is Ithaca Athletics at school. So how did you get connected with them so early in your college career?
So when I was a senior in high school and I knew I was going to Ithaca, I talked to Josh Mitnick, who I DM'd him on Instagram. He pretty much had my position in the athletic department before I was there. And he did a lot more production stuff. He was a film major. He recommended me to his boss, who's now my boss, who's Justin Lutz. He's the athletic communications director. And, I reached out, asked if I could have a job and have an opportunity. And, I was able to prove myself a little bit and get an opportunity really early on.
So speaking of like early in your college career, I think it was like, if not one of the first weeks that you were on campus, you made the Ithaca Goes In video of the football team. How did that happen? And what was it like finally being on campus, getting to shoot the IC football team?
It was really cool. It was like the first week that I was there. I don't know how I was very proactive about wanting to shoot sports right when I got there.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a point of that. I actually was out on assignment to shoot a story on Joe Germanario for the Ithacan photos that day. And I got done with shooting the story really early, and I just ended up shooting some video after.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up making a quick little edit and it kind of blew up.
Yeah. It was pretty dope. I'll give you that. Like the first week I was like, dude, this kid Peter, he's it. He's the next one.
Thank you.
For those that don't know, Ithaca and SUNY Cortland are rivals every year in something that we have called Cortica, the Cortica Jug, where they play each other in football. And this year we had it at MetLife Stadium for D3 college football's biggest game ever. And Peter got a chance to be on the field filming the whole thing. And on top of that, his videos were playing on the big screens. Could you talk about Cortica and how that whole experience was? Were you nervous?
Cortica was like the coolest experience of my life, if I'm being honest. It was the coolest thing ever. Right off the bat in my freshman year, I had the opportunity to, create all this content for the game and showcase it to thousands of people in the stands and on social media. I started prepping like 2 months before the game. I started to, think of some hype videos, think of some intro videos and stuff. And I ended up planning stuff out, and I ended up getting a studio in Park, which was awesome. And I ended up bringing the players in there and, doing a really big shoot. Shooting the game itself and telling the story after the game was incredible. All the players were so excited to be there. They wanted to win so bad. And, being able to tell that story was really great. I believe that my recap on that game is the best thing I've ever created.
Just talking a little bit more about the Cortica promo beforehand, you shot a lot of stuff inside the ICTV studio with the yellow light. How did that idea come about, and what was that process like?
So I was inspired by a lot of stuff I saw on social media by Division I programs that, had a lot of money, and they were able to create studio sets and, custom build them to, represent their team. And I realized that I could get a studio and kind of figure this out myself. I ended up working with Michael Salvino, who both of you guys know. He helped me out with lighting, and I could not be more grateful for him during that shoot. If it wasn't for him, then all the lighting would have been off. Everything would have been like, the shots would not have been as good. And, without him there, like, I'm very grateful for that. So, bringing him in was very beneficial. We were able to work together really well. We ended up working together on another shoot later in the year. So, that shoot was definitely a learning experience, but I think that all the players enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. It was a fun time.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it was really cool to have that huge project and to be working with the men's football team, like throughout the the year, but you didn't just work with men's football. You did video stuff and even photo stuff as well for many of the sports teams at IC. And so talk about that. Did it ever get stressful having to keep up with everything going on, or like what was your schedule like as you were bouncing between all the different sports?
Honestly, it wasn't that stressful at all. I think that, I was able to bounce around and cover most of the teams. During the winter, it got a little hectic. Teams definitely wanted me to come out and shoot. Like I made it out to gymnastics once. I wasn't able to make it out to wrestling. Um, I think I kind of prioritized basketball a little bit in the winter over some other sports. Basketball's my favorite sport to shoot. So, I really enjoyed working with a lot of the teams. The women's track team was awesome to work with in the winter. You could tell that they really wanted the content to be good. And, when the athletes put in the effort and they believe that the content will be good, then it's so much better.
For sure. And obviously our on-campus careers got cut short due to COVID-19. How did content creation for you shift once we got sent home?
Once we got sent home, it was a pretty big blow, honestly.
Yeah.
Both of the men's and women's basketball teams were in the playoffs. The women's track team was at nationals before they got sent home. And, me and a few other people had some content lined up for the national championships. They were a top candidate to win the national championship as a team. And we're definitely going to have some individual national champions. And it was really tough to see them just get sent home without finishing the job.
Right.
And, that whole shift was definitely hard. I edited like 2 videos over the course of 2 months, and I was probably the least amount of stuff I've edited in a few years. I worked on some basketball edits. I experimented with stuff, but I didn't really take advantage of the time to get better as an editor in those few months that we had online school. But I did know that I was going into my internship with the Orioles during that time. So getting the news that I was going to be fully remote was definitely a big blow.
Yeah. And you just mentioned it just now, your Orioles internship. So we're kind of going to shift our focus to there a little bit and jump back with that process. And so how did you first hear about the internship?
So I remember exactly where I was. I just shot a Harvard hockey game over the winter, and I was sitting in the press box editing some of my photos, and I got a notification from this Slack channel that I'm in that posts internships. And I saw that there was an internship posting with the Baltimore Orioles. I thought that'd be a long shot for me. I'm, a lifelong baseball fan. It'd be crazy if I could work for a Major League Baseball team. So I, reached out to the person who posted it, who's now my boss. I applied that night. I wrote my cover letter, and a few weeks later, when I was at school, I heard back, and I ended up having a few interviews, and it ended up working out.
That's awesome.
Great.
Like, what did you feel like as you applied? Like, you said you weren't necessarily expecting it, so were you like nervous and stressed about it, or was it more kind of feelings of just you sent it off and are kind of hoping for the best, but wouldn't be too upset if it didn't work out?
Yeah, so that explains it perfectly. If I didn't get a response, I would not have been that upset. I didn't get a response from a bunch of other teams I applied to, but getting a response was very exciting, to say the least.
So going into it, how is the internship different from what you expected initially?
So I was initially supposed to be in Baltimore with 3 other creative interns for the whole summer. I was supposed to be living in an apartment, going to the ballpark every day. I was supposed to be shooting, and I was going to be editing and doing a lot of other duties. Now I'm just at home editing, and it's been a little bit of a change, but I think I'm definitely happy with my job right now, and I'm very grateful for my coworkers and everything that I've learned so far.
Awesome. Do you think you're going to keep working for them throughout this season?
Yeah, I am. I just agreed with it with my boss. a few days ago. So
Sick.
I will be continuing.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll be continuing through the fall semester. We're currently looking for another fall intern. So if anyone is listening that's interested in working for the Baltimore Orioles, come and contact me and you can apply.
Nice little
Sick.
plug there.
Yeah.
So once your internship concludes, what is the next step for you? Because you have gained credibility and real world experience. So are you going to try to work with them again or reach out to someone else to try to work with them, or what's the plan there?
I think my first step is honestly just to bring everything that I've learned back to Ithaca and apply it to my job on campus. And, I'm going to have another 6 months before I can get back to working for them, hopefully, if we're back in the spring. So I think that that's my first step. And, working for them next summer would be a really great thing. And, I think that's one of my goals. Yeah.
Awesome. So now is the time where we're going to shift to talking about your creative process. We kind of covered your past and present leading all the way up to this moment. And so now we kind of just want to talk about, like I said, your creative process in general. So the first question there is, how do you approach a video? Like, just what's that process look like?
So I recently just switched over from Final Cut to Premiere. So I'm still a little bit new at my process, but I know it might not be perfect. But I mean, obviously I'll go and start a project. I'll import all of my footage. And as of right now with the Orioles, I'll just go through and try to find a theme for the video if I'm going through a highlight. Sound bites are the most important thing when it comes to trying to tell the story of, a player's recent successes. So I'll go through press conferences and interviews. I'll go through, broadcast clips to see if broadcasters said anything good about them, and kind of take those and I start with those sound bites and try to build off of them.
Sort of like a follow-up question though. With what you're doing is very similar to documentary filmmaking in that you can do a lot of prep work beforehand, but when you get there, it's all like anything could happen. So with that, do you find yourself getting better with the whole go with the flow type of idea and like being on the run and gun sort of feel? Like,
Yeah,
how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people in sports make shot lists for games. I've never made a shot list for anything, just because I know that I have some images in my head of, what I want certain things to look like. But when I go and shoot a game, anything can happen.
Right.
And you kind of just have to roll with the punches and shoot the action.
Right. One thing that stands out with your videos is your music selection. You always seem to be on it. Finding fast-paced beats to match the feel of your sports videos. Where do you find your music? Where do you go to find those tracks?
Finding music is like the hardest thing of the creative process, and I'm sure each of you guys know that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see Luke nod his head in agreement. But yeah, when I'm not creating videos with the Orioles, I'll just search through Spotify and YouTube, trying to find good music. It's really difficult, and I don't have enough money to pay for a music library, and the athletic department doesn't have enough money to pay for a music library. So we kind of have to be careful with the music that we select, in that we don't get copyrighted. But when I'm with the Orioles, we use APM. So I'll go through the APM library and, search until I find something that I like.
Gotcha.
Super cool. And obviously, the creative process has many facets, pre-production, post-production, and whatnot. But then shooting is also a big part of that. So when you're shooting events, do you shoot just videos or just photos, or is it both? Like, how do you find a balance between those things if it's both? And do you have a preference?
I can only do one or the other at the same time. I can't. It's the way that I work is like I'm either in video mode or photo mode, both in my head and in camera settings. when I'm taking photos, it's a completely different process than taking videos, changing settings constantly and, trying to find action and, moving around and stuff like that. When I'm shooting video, it's much different because I'm, moving around and I'm getting moving shots. I'm not getting still shots. So it's definitely a different process, and I don't get how anyone can do both if they don't have two cameras on them.
Right. So when describing your work, do you describe the things you make as films or as videos? Because I feel like that's a big distinction in like our industry.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. I used to call them films when I was in high school, and they're not films.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're videos. They're short form content. It's not a film. I mean, I've made a few films, but not everything that I make is a film.
Gotcha.
Interesting. All right. So now we are kind of moving into a segment that we kind of call like 10 quick questions to end the episode. And
Okay.
so we have 10 questions that we'll ask you, and your answers don't have to be quick. They can be as short or as long as you'd like, but
Okay.
we'll go through and ask you all these questions and then kind of wrap up.
Sounds good.
All right. So starting off, what song or songs do you feel most accurately describe your life?
That's an incredibly difficult question to answer.
It is.
Yeah.
Take your time.
Yeah. Take your
Oh
time.
man. Man, like nothing comes to mind when I think of that. Yeah.
Or if
Yeah,
not, maybe just like what are you listening to right now?
I really like the new Amine album.
Fire.
Isn't it good?
Yeah. Compensating is definitely.
Yeah. My favorite song off that
playlist right
is Woodlawn. That's my favorite off the album.
Incredible. Yeah. He definitely put together a great album.
Yep.
All right. So the next question is, what is one important thing that you carry with you every day other than your phone and wallet?
I always have a chair in my car.
Oh.
I always keep a chair in my car. I don't know why. I've used it a few times, but I always keep a chair in my car. I have a minivan, so I can fit a lot of stuff in there. Yeah.
Sick.
Nice.
If you weren't pursuing your current career, what would you be doing instead?
I have no idea. Probably working a desk job somewhere in like marketing or business or something.
Mm-hmm.
I've never had like an interest in doing anything else, anything other than creating things.
Yeah.
All right. What is a film that you wish you could have worked on?
La La Land.
Fire.
I'd love that.
Like, what role would you have want to have had on that film?
Like assisted in cinematography, or like even just been there to watch like the cinematographer work.
Yeah. What would you say is your dream piece of equipment?
Right now, probably a 1DX Mark III.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does everything that I want in photo and video.
So we all like to hype up cameras and lenses, but what secondary piece of equipment would you say is most important?
A microphone. Getting natural sounds in sports is a very, very important thing. I just have like a Rode video mic, and it came in a package with one of the cameras that I bought, and it has benefited me so much. It's worth so much more than $150. Yeah, definitely a microphone.
I guess this is a pretty loaded question for our field, but does gear really matter?
Yes and no.
Yeah,
I know that. Yeah. Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that, if you're shooting sports photography and you have a 50 millimeter lens you're not going to be able to shoot sports photography.
Mhm.
If you have a lens that's like 5.6, you're not going to be able to shoot sports photography. It just won't work. In sports, rather than other forms of video production and photography, you need certain pieces of gear. Like you're going to need a wide angle and a telephoto lens when you're shooting, in game. Frame rate really doesn't matter. Like you could shoot everything in 24 frames and be just fine. You could shoot everything in 60 frames and be fine. Like I shot in 60 frames up until January. And 120 is nice, but you don't need it to, tell the story that you need to tell.
Gotcha.
So the next question is also kind of loaded. The next couple are.
Okay.
Is there truth to the phrase, fake it till you make it?
I'm not sure. Like you could definitely fake being a filmmaker and have like one video on your Instagram and just be super cocky. But I don't think that's the way to get, like, that's not the way to get anywhere. I think that going out there and, being truthful with yourself and others is the best way to improve your career. Like you're not going to make it if you aren't doing that.
Right. How important are other people in the road to success?
So important. You can't do it alone. Like I could list off a bunch of names of people that have, gotten to me where I am today. And I'm sure there are going to be a lot of different people that help me get where I am in a few years. Like I'm just starting. Like I'm only going up as of right now. Like I believe that I'm not even close to my peak yet. Like I'm 19 years old. I think that I can get a lot better, and I think that I have a lot of room to grow in everything that I do. I think that there are a lot of people that are going to help me along the way. Yeah.
And the final question is, what is your hope for the future in your career?
My hope is to be able to get a job after college and be happy. That's it. Honestly, like I've thought about this a little bit. Like when I get out of college and I'm looking for a job, I'm looking at any place that is going to pay me, a livable salary and let me do what I love. And, that's all I'm going to need to start out. And, I mean, like you don't make much money in my field. Like it's in sports, it's just like not, the money's not there for, content personnel and stuff. So honestly, it's just to, be happy. It's the end goal.
I like it.
That's awesome. Well, that's all we've got for you.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Thanks so much, man.
Yeah, thank you for sitting in with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it. I know
Yeah,
I'm not the best spoken at some points, but
Thanks for taking the time to listen as we took a deep dive into Peter's pursuits and creative process. Please let us know what you think of the podcast by writing a review, or let us know what you want to hear by leaving us a voice message on Anchor. We'd love to hear from you. That's it for this week's episode of Making. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope to see you again in 2 weeks.